In this video series, we'll delve into the biblical timeline of history. We aim to uncover the significance of important historical dates, such as the creation in 11,013 BC, the flood in 4990 BC, and even the date when God would bring judgment upon the house of God, the churches, as mentioned in 1 Peter 4:17. We'll also explore the date of Judgment Day, which is also alluded to in the same verse. And you might be wondering what the biblical timeline of history is and why it's important to learn. These dates weren't placed in the Bible arbitrarily. They serve a purpose beyond mere knowledge. God always has a reason for concealing truths within the Bible. These essential dates are not explicitly stated in verses, but require meticulous exploration through comparing Scripture with Scripture, the biblical method for revealing truth, mathematical analysis, and ultimately guidance from God's Holy Spirit. So what exactly is the biblical timeline of history? It's a timeline that spans across the Bible, beginning with the first book, Genesis. This timeline then extends into subsequent books and chapters. Why should we invest time in learning about the biblical timeline of history? The answer can be found in Ecclesiastes 8:5. Whoso keepeth the commandment shall feel no evil thing, and a wise man's heart discerneth both time and judgment. To comprehend the current time or season, understanding past biblical events is essential to understand when future events will occur that the Bible is prophesied about.
Right. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Biblical Timeline of History. This is episode 19. And today we'll be going over some time paths. Can you hear me all right, Brian?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. I got Brian here. I think the last episode we did, it was about a month ago. So we're trying to just pick up where we left off. Well, not quite, because we're still working on that. But today we're going to go over some time paths. And really, the rest of the timeline is based off time paths. So we figured if we go over time paths, it would get people familiar with what exactly they are and how dates like 1994 was arrived at, 1988, and so on, 2011. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with the 7,000-year time path from Noah's flood, Noah's Ark. And well, I should just say the flood, not Noah's flood, but the flood.
Noah's time.
Yeah. But yeah, so 7,000 years from 4990 BC is a time path. And most people know about that time path that have listened to Mr. Camping and his books and e-Bible. So let's get right into it. All right, so if you recall, last time we went through the birth of Christ and how that was arrived at. We explained the proofs. And today we're not going to pick up there. We're going to go into the time paths like I stated, and then eventually we'll pick up with how Mr. Camping arrived at 29 AD for his ministry and also 33 AD for his death on the cross and resurrection. So you can access the timeline. You go to ebiblefellowship.org. You can scroll down. You'll see it right here. And click on the timeline there, or on the right side, you can click Biblical Timeline. So we're going to go ahead and click that. And then you can either press Enter again, or you can just scroll down. You'll see the timeline here. Zoom in a bit. Yep, so we've made it quite a bit on the timeline. We're almost near the end of time. We've made it to the 11,000th year of Earth's history. Last episode, we talked about Christ being born in 11,006, and we showed the proofs for this date. And yeah, so these other dates we're going to go through eventually, but we're just going to go through some time paths. So let's start with the one with the flood, just to kind of go over that. You can see my screen, all right, Brian?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So, as everyone's familiar with this time path, this is the the time path that really locked in May 21, 2011. It's the 7,000 years from the flood. So the flood occurred in 4990 BC. And this was the actual year, 6023. That's how old the earth was. And so we learned from 2 Peter 3:5, for this they willingly are ignorant of, that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, whereby the world that was then was being overflowed with water perished. And then we read, if you scroll down a few verses, it says, but beloved, so this is letting you know it's in the context of the flood. Talks about the world that then was, it was overflowed with water, perished. And then it's saying in 2 Peter 3:8, but beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. So we learned that this was the biblical clue that allowed us to take the 7 days that Noah had to enter into the ark and substitute a day for a year. So instead of 7 days, so Noah had 7 days to get into the ark, mankind had 7,000 years to get into the spiritual ark, which is heaven, in order to become saved before the door was shut on May 21. And so that's what you'll see here is Mr. Camping took the 7,000 years from the flood and projected it all the way into the future. And that lands you in the year 2011, or the 13,023 year of Earth's history. Now that we went over that time path, I'm going to go over another time path. So these are just time paths that we've discovered, just looking on the timeline. I don't know if I can say dogmatically that they have meaning, but they're very interesting nonetheless. So we'll just go over them just so you can see them. So the first one, if you take Noah, right? Noah lived to be 950 years. And if you click this moving arrow right next to his time span, what this will do is this will replicate his age. So 950, and then you add another 950. And you keep doing that 8 times. So 950 times 8 equals 76. So you're taking the date that Noah was born. That's 5590 BC. That's our starting point. And the date of his death. And then you keep going 950, 950, 950. And that's a total of 8 times. And interestingly enough, that lands you in the year 2011, just like the 7,000 year timeline does. And to me, I found that pretty interesting because Noah has everything to do with 2011. And really, we know 7,000 years. Noah was 600 years, right? And the flood occurred when he was 600 years. So we took the 7,000 years. That takes you to 2011. So really, we're just adding the additional 600 years of Noah's life from the point of the flood to his birth. And so instead of 7,000, you could start here and it'd be 7,600, right? And it's interesting because for whatever reason, God allowed Noah to live that long. If it was 951, it wouldn't work out to land in 2011. If it was 949, it wouldn't work out. So it's very precise that God allowed him to live this long and for it to land on 2011. All right, and then we're actually going to just kind of backtrack here. I just wanted to go over that. And any ones that we found significant, we added to the timeline. So there wasn't anything with Seth, Enos, or Canaan, but when you get to Mahalaleel.
Yeah. Oh, going back to Noah real quick, one thing I just noticed, because you said, eight of his lifespans get you to 2011. And that's interesting because 8, of course, represents a new beginning. There were 8 souls on the ark. And of course, we are now in the 8th millennial day since the flood. But one of the things I just noticed, he was 600 at the time of the flood, and he died at 950. So he lived for 350 years after the flood. And if you take 7,000 and you divide it by 350, which is how long he lived after the flood, it comes out to 20. So there were 20 of his lifespans that take you to 2011. 20 of his, not his total lifespan, his after the flood lifespan. And if you do that 20 times, that'll take you to 2011. And 20 is an interesting number because, for example, all the Israelites over the age of 20 were not able to enter the promised land. Or also, we know that Isaac married Rebekah at the age of 40, yet Jacob and Esau were born when he was 60. So they were separated a period of 20 years later. So, I just think that's just interesting. I don't know if you recognize, if you realize that or not. I literally just realized that as I was watching it.
Yeah, and I was also wanted to point out too that if you don't count Noah's lifespan, if you start from his death, or starting from his birth, if you start from his death, it's actually 7, and 7's also significant because of the 7 days in the ark. So really, if you start from his birth, which I think is also valid, and do 950 times 7, you'll also land in 2011. You know, and 7's also, like I said, very significant. 7 days to enter into the ark, 7,000 years, and so on. But yeah, going back to Mahalaleel, they lived to be 895. And, you know, I don't know about anyone else, but I've always wondered why God allowed these men to live the ages that they did. And obviously there's a physical reason, but there's also, I think, these numbers have significance, and maybe we just haven't really touched upon their significance. So Mahalaleel 895, if you click the arrow, and we found that from 2050 BC, that's when he's born. This is how old the earth is. If you go 895 and you times it by 10, 895 times 10 equals 8,950 years. You just added 0. And that lands you on the 11,000th year of Earth's history, or 13 BC. And that's kind of curious because we've seen that pattern in the Bible, like the 13,000th year is 1994. And so this era is the era of when Christ was born. He was born in 11,000.
No, the 13,000 years, 1988. 1994 is 13,006.
Right. That's, 1988. Yeah, thanks for correcting me. Yeah, 1988 is the 13,000th. The 11,000th year is the era that Christ lived, right, in the beginning. So that's significant. You also have the number 13 BC. Okay, and then moving on, we went through Mahalaleel and Noah. We went over the flood. So if we scroll down after the flood, and we get to Abraham. And Chris talked about this one in his study. Abraham lived to be 175 years old. And he discovered that you take the birth of Abraham, 2167 BC, and you go and you keep replicating Abraham's age. So 175 plus 175 plus 175. You keep doing that times 24. And if you start from his death, it's 23. So 23 is a significant number. It equals 175 times 24 equals 4,200 years. 42 is a significant number in the Bible. There are 42 encampments in the wilderness, and it's used a lot. That will take you to the year 2033. Now, depending on the counts, depending on how you count, it'll be 2033 or 2034. So, Brian, I don't know if you want to explain that a bit. As far as the getting 2033 versus 2034.
Oh, well, basically what you'd have to do is you have to do inclusive years. So rather than including you're including the year of his birth in that 4,200 years. So we actually have to go to the year before he was born because it's inclusive years, because it's being included within that 4,200 years.
Right.
So
So there's both ways to count. So if you count we went over this with the kings, you count the year that they became king versus their first full year of reigning. Or actually, a really good example is May 21, 2011. The year 2011, the first 5 months weren't Judgment Day. So January, February, March, April, May, up until May 21st, that was still the day of salvation. And then after May 21, you had roughly about another 7 months of Judgment Day. So within that year, you have salvation and judgment day. And so, if you were to count from 2011, give me a second, I'll show you here. So if you count from 2011 to, let's say, 2033, oops. If you count 22 years, that gets you to 2033. However, the calculator doesn't count the year 2011. When in its calculation, it actually starts at 2012, 2013, 2014, and so it gets you to 2033. However, if you just -1 and do 2010, and you add 23 years, that'll get you to 2033. Because in this case, the calculator will skip 2010 and it'll start with 2011. So you can count 2011 because there's still months of judgment day in it. You don't want to skip it, even though it wasn't a full year of judgment. Both ways are correct in counting. And we've gone over this before, inclusive versus non-inclusive. So if we count the year that Abraham was born, right, that'll get us to 2033. If you don't count the year he was born and you start with the next one, that gets you to 2034.
So in that case, what you have to do is if you're doing the inclusive years, then you have to go to the year before Abraham was born, because that was the last complete year before he was born.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the example he gave you, 2011 versus 2010.
Yeah.
So it's also interesting. Both the numbers 24 and 42 are in view. 24 is interesting because in the book of Revelation, I forget which chapter exactly it is, but it talks about the 4 and 20 elders. And I believe those 4 and 20 elders represent the entirety of the elect, as there were 12 tribes of the Old Testament and there were 12 apostles of the New Testament. And the number 42 is interesting, as if you go to Matthew 1, 14 generations from Abram to David, 14 generations from David to
that with the 42 generations,
from David to the taking away of Judah, and then 14 generations from the taking away from Judah in Babylon to the birth of Christ. So 42 generations. So that's a number that seems to be very significant.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing out. I almost forgot about that. I did forget about it. Okay, so the next time path we can look at is Ishmael. If you click Ishmael's, and again, I don't completely know if I understand the significance. This is just us, trying different things to see what dates they land on. So with Ishmael, he lived to be 137. The Bible gives us his age, which means it's curious, because why does God do that? He doesn't do that with everyone, so we can reason there must be some sort of significance. And so he's 137, and he was born in 2081 BC. This is the age of the earth. So if you take his 137, you times it by 30. 30 times, that gives you 4,110 years. And that will land you on 2029 AD, which is the 13,042 year of Earth's history. Now, the reason why this is interesting is because this is exactly 2,000 years from when Christ began his ministry in 29 AD. And so, don't know the significance, but it's interesting. Okay.
Before you move on, I've got a couple points I'd like to mention.
Yeah.
The number 137 is an interesting number because not only is Ishmael die at that age, but also Levi and Amram, who were the first and third of the timeline patriarchs of the 4 generations in Egypt. So you had Levi, Kohath, Amram, and Aaron. And so 2 of those, the first and the third chronologically, but 2 of the 4 generations in Egypt also lived to be 137 years old. It's also interesting because Abraham, who can be a picture of God the Father or can be a picture of the believers, and he was 100 and Sarah was 99 when Isaac was born, so he was 10 years older than her. And Sarah, who's very often a picture of the elect, she died at the age of 127. And if you take that 10 years older that Abraham was, that means Abraham would have been 137 at the time of Sarah's death. And Sarah's the only woman in the Bible whose death age is given. So those, I'm not sure what exactly the number means, but those are other instances where the number appears, and I just wanted the listeners to be aware of that. So if they see this number, perhaps they can, call into the open forum or whatever, and maybe have some idea to steer Chris or whoever in the right way.
All right. Thanks for sharing.
And one other thing, the number 30, because it's 30 of them, that's also interesting because 30 is, they were 30 years not afflicted, because they were in Egypt for 430 years, but they were only afflicted for the last 400 years. So the first 30 years they were not afflicted. Also, Joseph was prime minister, was 30 when he became prime minister of Egypt. So that's another prominent case of the number 30. I believe also Judas betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. And one last thing is Adam, who can represent either mankind or Christ, lived for 930 years. And if you break it down, it breaks down to 30 times 31. So there again, instances of the number 30. I just thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll go on to the next time path. All right. And okay, so this one, I'm sure you guys are going to be familiar with. This is the 430 years in Egypt. Brian was just talking about this. If you, we've gone over this before. If you backtrack from when Aaron was 83, and you go Amram, Kohath, you can figure out Levi's age when he entered Egypt at the age of 60, I believe. And
Right.
that totals out to be 430. Now, Mr. Camping took the 1290 from Daniel. If you do this time path, 430, that's the first 430, and then you add another 430 and another 430, that equals a total of 1,290 years. And I don't know if we've gone over this yet, but we're going to eventually get to it. But basically, these first three sets of 430 equals 1290. So if you take 430 times it by 3, you get 1290, right? So this whole span right here equals 1290. And where this starts is it starts when Jacob enters Egypt. This is the year 1877 BC. And it happens to be the second half of so there's two parts of the famine. You had 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. This was the tribulation, one of the tribulations in the Bible, the 7 years of famine. And Jacob enters in the second year out of 7 years. So there's 5 years left of the famine. And so I think Mr. Camping called it a midpoint of the tribulation. I feel like it's a little maybe more accurate to say second part of the tribulation. Because midpoint would indicate it's like exactly the middle point of 7 years. That would be 3.5.
Yeah, so we call it the dividing point.
I mean, the dividing point. Okay, maybe I read that wrong, but that works too. The dividing point. So the second half of this 7 year famine or tribulation would be the 5 years remaining, right? So that's where it starts. You take the 1290 or 430 plus 430 plus 430, that lands you in 587 BC, which is the dividing point of this tribulation when they went into captivity 70 years into Babylon. And I believe, Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was the 22nd year of the captivity. So they had a remainder of
48 years.
48 years. So here it's the second year into the 7 year tribulation. And over here, it's 22 years into the 70-year tribulation. And then you take another 1290, again, 430 plus 430 plus 430. And then you do that one more time, 430 plus 430 plus 430, which is another 1290. That lands exactly in 1994, which is the dividing point of the Great Tribulation. Right? So the Great Tribulation began in 1988. 6 years later was 1994, and then you had 17 years remaining to get to 2011. So if you kind of lay out these numbers, you have 2 out of 7, you have 22 out of 70, and you have 6 years out of 20. Oops. Messed that up. You have 6 years out of 23 years. And so each of those 1290s land you on significant periods of time. All right. So
And the percentages are relatively close too. So if you go 2 sevenths, that's about 27%, or excuse me, that's 28%. So 2 divided by 7, I mean, it's not exactly, but that's about 28%. And if you go 22 out of 70, that's 31%, and 6 out of 23, that's 26%. Or if you go 23 divided by 84, 2,300 days out of 8,400 days, that's 27%. So they're kind of in the ballpark.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and most importantly, it just lands on that second half. So God has taken three tribulations in the Bible and divided them. And they each have, there's 2 parts to each of the tribulations. So it's very significant, this 1290. So, we have an example of being able to take a number like 430 and to replicate it again and again and again to see what date it lands on, and it lands on significant dates. So after the first 430s, that lands you in a significant date of 587, right? And you take the next three 430s, right? And we don't know if anything significant happened here, but you keep going, and that lands you in 1994. So, the same idea is with these, and we'll see that later as we get down to Moses. I haven't really checked to see if, like, for example, if Ishmael, do you go and to see if any of these land on significant dates as well. I just know that the very end point is 2029, but it could be, after a few of these, it's touching significant dates. So, all right, well, we'll move on to Amram. And again, if we skip like Kohath or Levi, there just wasn't any significant date that they've landed on. So Amram lived to be 137, which Brian pointed out was the same as Ishmael and also the same as Levi. So God's, highlighting 137 on the timeline 3 times. So if we click this, the arrow, oops, we'll see that Amram was born in 1667 BC. This is how old the earth was. If you replicate his lifespan 27 times, it equals 3,699 years, and that lands you in the year 2033, exactly, or the 13,045 year of Earth's history. So obviously that's significant because we've been looking at 2033 as the possibility of the end of the world, and also Abraham, his lifespan also lands in 2033. So we have two time paths here that are landing you there, and just like the flood, we have 2 time paths with the flood that land you in 2011. So, all right,
And just real quick before you move on,
sure.
You'll notice that it's 27 of his lifespans. And 27 is 3 times 3 times 3, 3 being God's purpose, and there's 3 of them. So in a sense, you could say like three times, 3 doubled in a sense. Or if you go from his death, instead of 27 of his lifespans from his death, it would be 26 of those lifespans. And 26 is 2 times 13, which again, both of those numbers have relevance. Now we know, for example, Josiah Um, no, I'm sorry, he became king at 8. Never mind. But anyway, it's 2 times 13, which are significant numbers.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, I was trying to see where else 27 is used. But and also 26, if you start from his death, then you have the number 26. But again, nothing really comes on the top of my mind, but I just find it interesting that it lands on 2033. So this is another thing to look into. Okay, so Moses is actually very interesting to me. So if we look at Moses, so we've kind of talked about this before, but what makes Moses interesting is God himself breaks down Moses's life into 3 sets of 40. So Moses lived to be 120, and we can break down his life to 40 plus 40 plus 40, right? And if we click this, you'll see Moses was 120, and if you replicate his lifespan 13 times, that'll get you to 33 AD. And this is when Christ was died on the cross and resurrected, right?
Correct.
And that's 13 times. You have the number 13 right there.
That's to say 11,045, not 11,046.
Right. Yeah, that's a typo. Should be 11,045. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for correcting that. There's so many numbers that it's definitely easy to make mistakes. And then you have the number 1560. So that obviously breaks down into these 13 120s. And then what's even more fascinating is you can continue to break down, just like, God broke down the first 3 sets of 40 right here, 40, 40, 40. So 1, 2, 3. But if you keep going, and I think that it's possible God is teaching us to do that, to follow this pattern, keep adding more 40s, right? And we've gone over right here. We have a 40, we have a 40, we have a 40, and 360 breaks down, I think, into 9 40s. So this whole span. So the third 40 is when they're in the wilderness. You have all these 40s, these 9 40s here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then you add 2 more 40s. Those are the 40s when Saul was reigning as king and when David, and then again, you can just keep going. And if you do that 39 times, so 40 times 39, you do that 39 times, you land right here on this yellow 40. And that takes you to, again, 33 AD. That's when Christ resurrected. But I'm sorry, if you do 38 40s, it'll take you to 7 BC. Add another 40, that's 33 AD. So it's the whole lifespan of Christ, because he lived to be about 40 years old, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was 38 and a half, but yeah, 40 inclusive years.
Yeah. So that's significant because Moses' life takes you to Christ's first coming, right? That's significant in itself. Now let's continue that stream of 40s. We don't continue the 120s because it doesn't land on anything significant. But if you continue the 40s and you keep going down and you do it 40 times 50, so you're starting with this 40 and you're doing 50 40s, that lands you, that's 2,000, right? 40 times 50 is 2,000. That lands you in 2033. So you take 33 AD plus 2,000 and you get the year 2033. So the reason I find this fascinating is Moses's time paths take you to Christ's first coming, but they also take you to his second coming. And you can start from his birth in 7 BC, go 40 years, and that takes you to 33 AD. And then you do the same thing over here. This 40 right here, it takes you to 1994. You add 40 years, 1994. Well, if depending on the count, it's 39, right? But if you actually count 1994 as one of the years, right, which the calculator doesn't do, but we'd have to minus 1. You add 40 years, that lands you in 2033, right?
Yeah.
And again, this is like a major proof, I think, for 2033. So, how many 2033s have we found? We have Abraham, we have Amram, and we have Moses taking us to 2033. So far, that's 3 significant time paths very interesting, I should say. Like, so yeah, were you going to say something, Brian?
No.
Yep. So, and then if you add these numbers up, all these 40s, that equals, let's see, you just add
79.
79. No, I think it's 88. 88 40s.
No, because you said it was.
Well, if you start from this 40, the first one.
Oh, it
Yeah.
says 39 40s, and then if you add that to the 40 40s, that adds up to 79, doesn't it?
No, there's 40 50s. Yeah, so you're adding the 2,000 years, plus you're adding the 1560. So from here to this 40 is 1,560 years. And then from this 40 to this 40 is 2,000 years. And that's, we're taking the 2,000 years from Christ's resurrection on the cross. Right.
Yeah, and that's also one of the proofs that because 50 is a Jubilee year.
Right.
So Christ was born in a Jubilee year. 1994 was a Jubilee year. And so 1994 was the 40th Jubilee year after the birth of Christ.
Right. And we went over this last time, but we'll see from this Jubilee, we did 28 50s, and that got us to Christ's birth. So you can just see this number 50. So it's very interesting to see that here we have. And again, these are all periods of testing. 40 is the number for testing. So from Moses's birth all the way to the end of time, it's just constant 40 periods of periods of 40 years, right?
Yeah.
And again, we see the same pattern with the 360, right? The land had rest 40 years, the land had rest 80 years, that's 2 40s. Land had rest 40 years, land had rest 40 years, right? So when you add all these up, that they all equal, they're all made up of 40s. Yep, and that's pretty much, there's one more time path we'll go over, but that's, as far as all the patriarchs, those are all the ones that really stood out as far as significant dates, using this method of replicating their time span. Now, there's no more patriarchs after Aaron, so once we get past Aaron, of course, we have this time path that God gives us, 480 years. So this is another example of a time path God gives in the Bible, from the Exodus to when Solomon laid the foundation of the temple. But yeah, we don't have any more patriarchs to really do this with. Now, there is one other method, you could say, to coming up with time paths. And this is something that I think was recently discovered. I'm not sure if Mr. Camping talked about it or Chris. I'm just finding it to be interesting. I'm not teaching and saying that there's it's just something to look into. So if you start with Adam, right? And we see God gives us number 130, right? Adam was born in year 0, and he begat Seth at age 130. Now we notice if you take the 130 and you replicate this number, so instead of replicating the whole lifespan of Adam, we're just replicating this number 130. And you click this, you'll see 130 plus 130 plus 130 all the way. You do that 100 times. So from the birth of Adam to the birth of Seth is 130. 130 times 100. That's kind of easy math. That'll get you to the 13,000th year in 1994. So again, this is taking you to a significant date. And I found that using this method of replicating these numbers, it seems like there's more significant dates that this lands on. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything else, Brian, but that's basically it. We can go over more of these later. But yeah, I just found that very fascinating.
Okay.
So yeah, Brian will pick up with something else.
Okay. Yeah, that's something I wanted to do during the Kings portion of the timeline. Just the idea of how many tribes are there. Because we talked about Judah and the 10 tribes. Well, that adds to 11. But the Bible a lot of times says, well, there's 12 tribes. But we also know there's actually 13 tribes. So I just wanted to kind of go over this and where these different numbers come from. So after the death of Solomon, which was in 10,082 EA or 931 BC, the nation of Israel was divided. And the descendants of David and Solomon ruled over the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, and the other 10 tribes were ruled by a different set of kings. And Rehoboam, who was Solomon's son, became the first king of Judah, and Jeroboam became the first king of Israel, meaning the first king of the 10 tribes of Israel. So, like I said, at this point, why do we talk about Judah and the 10 tribes when there are actually either 12 or 13? And to answer that, Carl, can you pull up Genesis 35, 23 to 26? Hello?
Oh, let me make you co-host so you can share your screen. Oh, yeah, you're co-host. You can do it.
Okay. Okay. So if we look at Genesis 35, and I'll read verses 23 to 26. The sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn. So Reuben was the firstborn. And Simeon and Levi and Judah and Issachar and Zebulun. That's 6. Verse 24, the sons of Rachel, Joseph, and Benjamin. That's 8. Verse 25, the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, Dan and Naphtali. That's 10. Verse 26, the sons of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, Gad and Asher. That's 12. These are the sons of Jacob, which were born to him in Padan Haram. So we have 12 sons. And let's look at Deuteronomy 21, verses 15 to 17. If a man have 2 wives, one beloved and the other hated, and they shall have borne him children, both the beloved and the hated, and if the firstborn son be hers that was hated, then it shall be when he maketh sons to inherit, that he that which he hath, that he may not make the son of the beloved firstborn before the son of the hated, which is indeed the firstborn. So here, if a man had 2 wives, he's not allowed to make, so the oldest son gets a double inheritance. And if he loves one and doesn't love the other, he's not allowed to show favor to the son of the loved wife by making him firstborn above his older brother. And Reuben, who was the firstborn, was indeed the son of the hated, as we read in Genesis 29 and verses 30 and 31. And he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 years. And when Jehovah saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So again, Leah was the hated, and Rachel was the loved wife. However, we also read a law in Leviticus 18:8. The nakedness of thy father's wife shalt thou not uncover. It is thy father's nakedness. Now, just to point out, your father's wife isn't necessarily your mother, as there are a number of men who had multiple wives, and in the case of Jacob, Rachel had a handmaiden named Bilhah, and Leah had a handmaid named Zilpah. And let's go to First Chronicles 5:1. Now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn, but for as much as he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph, the son of Israel, and the genealogy is not to be reckoned after the birthright. So what happened was Reuben, who was the firstborn, slept with one of the concubines, either Zilpah or Bilhah. And because of that, presumably Jacob would have gotten angry, and he took the right of the firstborn away from him. And that was not a sin historically, because he didn't take away the right of the firstborn because he was the son of the hated, but rather because he sinned in uncovering Jacob's nakedness. And we can also read about this in 1 Corinthians 5:1. It is reported commonly that there is fornication among you, and such fornication and is not named among the Gentiles, that one should have his father's wife. So in the New Testament, this is also shown to be an abomination. It's something that even the Gentiles don't do. So this was a really bad thing that he did. So let's go back to Genesis 48. And we'll look at verse 1. So Joseph was able to receive the right of the firstborn after Reuben sinned. Genesis 48:1. And it came to pass after these things that one told Joseph, behold, thy father is sick. And he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. So Joseph had two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And we're going to skip down to verses 21 and 22. Genesis 48:21 and 22. And Israel said unto Joseph, behold, I die, but God shall be with you and bring you again unto the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to thee one portion above thy brethren, which I took out of the hand of the Amorite with my sword and with my bow. So Joseph gets the double portion. So he's going to have two tribes, which would be his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. So at this point, you have Jacob's 11 sons, excluding Joseph, plus Ephraim and Manasseh. That makes 13 tribes. However, we constantly hear talk about 12 tribes. So let's go to So how do we go from 13 to 12? So let's go to Exodus 13, verses 1 and 2. And Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, sanctify unto me all the firstborn, whatsoever openeth the womb among the children of Israel, both of man and beast, it is mine. And let's go to Numbers 3. And we'll start in verse 5. And Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, bring the tribe of Levi near, and present them before Aaron the priest, that they may minister unto him. And they shall keep his charge, and the charge of the whole congregation before the tabernacle of the congregation, to do the service of the tabernacle. And they shall keep all the instruments of the tabernacle of the congregation, and the charge of the children of Israel, to do service of the tabernacle. And thou shalt give the Levites unto Aaron and to his sons. They are wholly given unto him out of the children of Israel. And thou shalt appoint Aaron and his sons, and they shall wait on their priest's office, and the stranger that cometh nigh shall be put to death. And Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, and I, behold, I have taken the Levites from among the children of Israel, instead of all the firstborn that openeth the matrix among the children of Israel. Therefore the Levites shall be mine, because all the firstborn are mine. For on that day I smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, and I hallowed unto me all the firstborn in Israel, both man and beast, mine shall they be. I am Jehovah. And so so God is taking, rather than taking all the firstborn, he's taking the Levites as an inheritance. And we're going to skip down to Numbers 18. And we're going to look at verses 20 to 24. And Jehovah spake unto Aaron, Thou shalt have no inheritance in their land, neither shalt thou have any part among them. I am thy part and thy inheritance among the children of Israel. And behold, I have given the children of Levi all the tenth in Israel for an inheritance for their service, which they serve, even the service of the tabernacle of the congregation. Neither must the children of Israel henceforth come nigh the tabernacle of the congregation, lest they bear sin and die. But the Levites shall do the service of the tabernacle of the congregation, and they shall bear their iniquity. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, that among the children of Israel they have no inheritance. But the tithes of the children of Israel, which they offer as an heave offering unto Jehovah, I have given to the Levites to inherit. Therefore I have said unto them, among the children of Israel they shall have no inheritance. So you have 13 tribes, but the tribe of Levi is not going to be given any inheritance. And so that leaves 12 tribes left. And the children of Levi are going to be dispersed throughout the other 12 tribes, living among them. And let's look at Numbers 1 to 3. And Jehovah spake unto Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tabernacle of the congregation, on the first day of the second month, in the second year after they were come out of the land of Egypt, saying, Take ye the sum of all the congregation of the children of Israel after their families, by the house of their fathers, with the number of their names, every male by their polls, from 20 years old and upward, all that are able to go forth to war in Israel. Thou and Aaron shalt number them by their armies. And let's skip down to verse 45. So all those were numbered of the children of Israel by the house of their fathers, from 20 years old and upward, all that were able to go forth to war in Israel. Even all they were numbered that were 600,000, 3,550. But the Levites, after the tribe of their fathers, were not numbered among them. For Jehovah had spoken unto Moses, saying, Only thou shalt not number the tribe of Levi, neither take the sum of them among the children of Israel. But thou shalt appoint the Levites over the tabernacle of testimony, and over the vessels thereof, and over the things that belong to it. They shall bear the tabernacle and all the vessels thereof, and they shall minister unto it, and shall encamp round about the tabernacle. And so again, you see that the tribe of Israel was separated from the other 12. Although it's not necessary for the timeline, there is one other passage I'd like to read because I think it's interesting. And it's in Numbers chapter 3, and I'll start in verse 39. So God did command Moses and Aaron to number the Levites, but rather than from 20 years old and upward, it was a month and upward. So Numbers 3:39, and all that were numbered of the Levites, which Moses and Aaron numbered at the commandment of Jehovah, throughout their families, all the males from a month old and upward were 22,000. And Jehovah said unto Moses, Number all the firstborn of the males of the children of Israel from a month old and upward, and take the number of their names. And thou shalt take the Levites for me, I am Jehovah, instead of the firstborn among the children of Israel, and the cattle of the Levites, instead of the firstlings among the cattle of the children of Israel. And Moses numbered, as Jehovah commanded him, all the firstborn among the children of Israel. And all the firstborn males, by the number of names from a month old and upward, of those that were numbered of them, were 22,213. And Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, Take again the Levites instead of the firstborn among the children of Israel, and the cattle of the Levites instead of their cattle, and the Levites shall be mine. I am Jehovah. And for those that are to be redeemed of the 213 of the firstborn of the children of Israel, which are more than the Levites, thou shalt even take 5 shekels apiece by the poll after the shekel of the sanctuary, shalt thou take them. The shekel is 20 gerahs, and thou shalt give the money wherein the odd number of them to be redeemed unto Aaron and to his sons. And Moses took the redemption money of them that were over and above them that were redeemed by the Levites. Of the firstborn of the children of Israel took he the money 1,365 shekels after the shekel of the sanctuary. And Moses gave the money of them that were redeemed unto Aaron and to his sons according to the word of Jehovah, as Jehovah commanded Moses. So basically what happened here is that God took the Levites instead of the firstborn, and there were 22,000 Levites, but the number of the firstborn of Israel was 22,273. So they had to pay 5 shekels apiece for the difference of the 273 people. And just to give a breakdown, 22,000 Levites, 22,000 is 2 times 11 times 1,000. The firstborn was 22,273. That's a prime number. And the difference of 273 is 3 times 7 times 13. So the next question is, why do we talk about Judah and the 10 tribes if there are actually 12 tribes? Because Judah and 10 tribes, that's 11. So what happened to the 12th tribe? So to answer that, we're going to look at 1 Kings 11.
Hey, Brad, I just want to let you know it's 7:30. So it's just about time for the next program.
Oh, yeah.
I'll let you wrap it up though.
Okay. 1 Kings 11:4. For it came to pass when Solomon was old that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with Jehovah his God, as was the heart of David his father. And Solomon went after Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Amorites. And Solomon did evil in the sight of Jehovah, and went not fully after Jehovah his God, after Jehovah, as did David his father. Verse 7, Then did Solomon build an high place for Chemoth, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrificed unto their gods. And Jehovah was very angry with Solomon, because his heart was turned from Jehovah God of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice, and had commandment concerning this thing, that he should not go after other gods, but kept not that which Jehovah commanded. Wherefore Jehovah said unto Solomon, For as much as this is done of thee, and thou hast not kept my covenant and my statutes, which I have commanded thee, I will surely rend the kingdom from thee, and give it to thy servant. Notwithstanding, in thy days I will not do it for David thy father's sake, but I will rend it out of the hand of thy son. Howbeit, I will not rend away all the kingdom, but will give one tribe to thy son for David my servant's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, which I have chosen. And in 1 Kings 11, we're going to skip down to verses 28. And the man Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor, and Solomon, seeing the young man that he was industrious, he made him ruler over all the charge of the house of Joseph. And it came to pass that when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem, that the prophet Ahijah the Shilonite found him in the way, and he had clad himself with a new garment, and they two were alone in the field. And Ahijah caught the new garment that was on him and rent it in 12 pieces. And it's not hard to see a parallel, 12 pieces and 12 tribes. Verse 31. And he said to Jeroboam, take thee 10 pieces, for thus saith Jehovah, God of Israel, behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to thee. But he shall have one tribe for my servant David's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. So here we see Judah in the 10 tribes, and we'll continue in verse 33, 1 Kings 11:33. Because they have forsaken me and have worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Zidonians, Shemosh, the god of the Moabites, and Milcom, the god of the children of Ammon, have not walked in my ways to do that which is right in mine eyes, to keep mine statutes and my judgments, as did David his father. Howbeit I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him prince all the days of his life for David my servant's sake, whom I choose, because he kept my commandments and my statutes. But I will take the kingdom out of his son's hand, and will give it unto thee, even 10 tribes. And again, 10 tribes. And unto his son I will give one tribe, that David my servant may have a light always before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen me to put my name there. And let's look at 1 Kings 8:25.
Hey, Brian, this might just have to be the last verse just because it's 7:34 already.
Okay.
And guys waiting to do the Bible reading.
All right. 1 Kings 8:25. Now therefore, Jehovah God of Israel, keep with thy servant David my father, that thou promised him, saying, there shall not fail thee a man in my sight to sit on the throne of Israel, so that thy children take heed to their way, that they walk before me as thou hast walked before me. So I guess that's it.
Great, thanks. And just wanted to thank everyone for joining, and we're going to try to pick this up next time, and that'll be episode 20. So the next program is going to be Guy. Make way for him.